Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Leslie Watkins. Hope everybody's well today. We have a kind of a rainy, gloomy day in Connecticut today. I have gone through my punches and I've pulled out a selection of various flower punches and yes, and Circe is here being a pest because she wants me to throw her mouse for her so that she can fetch it. But I'm sitting on it so that she can't find it, and hopefully she's going to get bored with me making the video and disappear for a little while. But I have a collection of punches that are both new and retired, and I love my punches. This one I showed you last time. This is the Petal Park Builder Punch, and this one is still available. And it's particularly nice because it's got 3 different sized flowers plus a leaf. All right, but I was noticing that on the clearance rack we have this punch. This is called, I think it's called Blossoms and Leaves or Flowers and Leaves, and it also has a pair of leaves and 2 different sized flowers. The big difference is that these flowers have 4 petals, and some of these older punches, like this one for instance, has a 5-petal flower. And if you are familiar with some of the flowers that we grow in the garden, they're divided into different groups of how many petals they have, or at least what the founding species of flowers had. So that's just a little bit of botanical information. So if you are creating a certain type of flower, you may want to pay attention to how many petals are on there. And there's this other punch that has the petals separate, large and small, and what may be a center and a sepal and a leaf. And so with this one you can have as many petals as you'd like. You could also cut any of these apart. Anyway, so today what I thought I would show you would be how to get started with watercolor on some good watercolor paper so that you could customize your flowers to be any color combination that you would like them to be. And I thought that for the example today we'd go ahead and use this flower and leaf punch that's on sale. I think it's $11.40 on the clearance rack. So keep an eye out for that. It's a good one. And then I also, before I put these away, I also have a couple of punches that have various leaf shapes too. And this nice bow punch actually has a little sprig of berries too, if you can see that. Okay, there you go. So that's a nice punch to have, and that's still available. So these 2 are still available. This one is on clearance, and I'm sure a lot of you have plenty of these punches in your stash like I do, because you just never want to give them up. So let me get these down. Okay, and I'm going to be using my Glass Mat Studio today. And let me zoom out so you can get a good look at this. So there it is. Actually, it doesn't even fit on the viewer, but you can see it is a beautiful big rectangular mat. Okay, it's got this pretty floral decoration. It's made by Stampin' Up, and it has inches along the left and bottom, and then it has millimeters along or millimeters I should say, along the top and the right. And as a paper designer, I love having both measurements because there are times when you want to get a smaller measurement, and when you start getting down into the fractions of an inch, it doesn't come out so well. This way you can always find your exact center and an even division, so I love having both on there. And I've got some leftover ink here that I left to dry on the palette, and that's fine. I'm just going to leave that there for now. However, I'm going to be using some different colored inks, and I have a project in mind coming up which is going to be a Easter project, and I'm going to be using the color palette that's found in the lovely lavender set. So I've got some Highland Heather, Gorgeous Grape, Blackberry Bliss, and then I've got my Lost Lagoon and Pretty Peacock for my leaves. I'm going to get out my water painter. I have a little bit of water to the side here, and I'm going to be using the Fluid 100 paper today. Get a fresh sheet out. So the Fluid 100 watercolor paper is a 140-pound paper, which is quite stiff for flower sculpting. And you may, so I don't know if you'll be able to see this so well on camera, but here's an example of a 90-pound watercolor paper, and it's much lighter, much more flexible. The Fluid 100 140-pound paper you see is much stiffer. It's much more like a card. And I thought we'd go ahead and use both. And one of the reasons why I'm excited to have this glass mat is because it's so perfect for doing your wet and wet watercolor on, which is what we're going to be doing today. Also, when you're using inks from the reinkers, you can just put the inks right on your palette and you'll be ready to go. You don't even need a smaller palette. If you're interested in getting one of these glass mat studios, and it's called the Studio because it comes with other pieces. And let me see if I can show you what those look like real quick. Okay, this is a very small space. I don't know how things jump away from me, but they do. All right, here we go. So with the Glass Mat Studio, it also comes with a silicone mat that you can put your ink pads on, or you can squeeze different product on to use something sparkly, maybe gold ink. And then you also have a very nice sort of a chamois or a cleaning pad, which is very nice. So it's not just the glass mat. And these are valued at about $60, but you can get it for free if you decide to get yourself a starter kit. And I really strongly suggest that that's the way to go, because not only do you get the Glass Mat Studio for free, but you'll also get a lot of other products that you can use to help you get started. Many of those that you see me using here today, and you'll be able to get them at a great discount and not have to pay for shipping. So there's much more about that on the benefits page that I will post in a little while with the materials that I'm using today, so that you'll be able to follow along. And also, I would love for you to subscribe to my newsletter Notes, because in there I have all the information. So this upcoming notes that is about to go out, I have pictures from my trip out west. I just came back from the Grand Canyon and Sedona, and I share my watercolor painting kit with you. And I also have some how-to links for videos on how to color the Easter Bunny, which is coming right up. And I'll just give you a sneak peek of that. So there is the Easter Bunny, okay? And I have more to show you on this, and we're going to be doing more of the Easter Bunny and using the flowers tomorrow during Paper Crafting Thursday. But yeah, a whole bunch of things. There's my schedule, there's classes, workshops, and some new announcements coming right up that I think you'll be interested in. So please subscribe to Notes from Dandelion Cottage. And the way you do that is just by going into the sign up button above in the banner section. Just click on sign up, it'll take you right there. Or if you're watching on YouTube, you will find the button in the description below. Okay, I think that's all the news. I've got my spritzer here. So I'm going to get my big spritzer out because I want to get these nice and wet. I'm going to go ahead and start by wetting my glass palette. And then I'm going to add water to both sides of my thick watercolor paper. And this way it's going to have a minute to soak in, because I don't want the water to just be on the surface. I want to have it soak down into the paper so that the color will move nicely on it. I'm going to do the same thing with my 90-pound paper. And then when these are painted and dried, I'm going to show you the difference between the weights of the paper, and why you may want to use that as a consideration when you're creating your flowers, depending on what kind of project you're using them for. Now, I'm going to be painting sort of abstractly here. Some of the flowers, of course, will be this sort of squarish, roundish shape, but with the scraps from the paper, I'm going to be using the lovely lavender dies, and they're sort of long and skinny. So I'm just going to be thinking about that in the back of my mind. I'm going to begin with my lightest color first. So this is the Highland Heather. Just going to kind of move this over so that you can see it, I hope. Let's see if I pull this down a little bit. All right. I'm going to go ahead and open up my Gorgeous Grape and also my Blackberry Bliss. Now another beautiful color in the DSP is Berry Burst, and if I'd thought of it, I would have brought that up as well, but I don't have that here at the moment. So we're going to go ahead and begin with these. And now that the water has had a minute to soak in, I'm going to go ahead and give it a second spraying. Flip those over. Same on the other side. And now you can see that my paper is getting really saturated. So you see how wet that is? So it's really wet. Now this is exactly what watercolor paper is designed to do. It's designed to hold large amounts of water without falling apart. And also this is why that glass mat is so awesome. It's a great size as well. So we can get 2 of these going at once. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a diluted mixture of some of my Highland Heather, and I'm just going to start adding some random splotches. to create a kind of a all over pattern. Same over here. And because the paper is nice and wet, you see I'm getting all these beautiful soft edges. And that's what I'm looking for. Now, if you do get a hard edge here and there, no worries. Don't worry about it. You'll be able to use it just fine. But if you use plenty of water, this is the sort of effect that you'll start to have. So there's the beginning. I'm going to go now into my gorgeous grape, which is a darker color, but I am diluting it way down with plenty of water. Okay, and I'm just going to begin to add that in. All right, so nothing to it. You don't even have to think about what you're doing much. It's just basically pushing the color around on the surface of the paper. And by the way, I'm not pressing hard. I'm just very lightly using my brush on the surface as I go. Now this is going to be super dark, so I'm going to add more water to that. This is the gorgeous Blackberry Bliss. I love this color. And I still have some beautiful ribbon that is retired that I've kind of been hoarding in my stash because I like it so much. All right, so there's my base layer. All right, and I can start to add a little more color to some of these areas. Going back to my Highland Heather. Can add some gorgeous grape. You can see that the Highland Heather and the gorgeous grape are very close. So it's almost like having two different values of the same color. The same is true with the Pretty Peacock and the Lost Lagoon. They work very well together. Now if you want, you could also add some shimmer to your painting as you go. So if you have some Wink of Stella, or if you have some shimmer mist, or any of the products that have mica in them are going to give you a beautiful shimmer to your painting. You can add gold foiling or the gold flakes at the end. I'll probably do a little bit of that tomorrow. Maybe, we'll see. We'll see how things evolve. And of course, you can heat emboss with any of your metallics or even your clear colors. So lots and lots of options. Here we go. All right, so this one's starting to get to where I want it. I'm going to give this one a little more TLC. And I can always come back in later and add any little details that I may want to add. Now while I'm at it, well, these have a minute to set up. I'm going to get another scrap piece of watercolor paper, and I'm going to do some leaf painting background as well. So let me grab that. And I don't have a little piece. I'm going to go ahead and use the larger piece, but I'll just paint half of it. I'm going to move this over a little. And of course, cleanup is simple. You just take your paper towel, give it a quick wipe, and you're ready to go. All right, so this time using the Lost Lagoon. Pretty Peacock. And I'm just checking to see that if anybody's out there. Okay, and I see Kelly and Cheryl and Sandra. Good morning, ladies. Nice to see you here. Did anybody give the sculpted paper flowers a try this week? I hope you did. I hope you did, and I hope that you post what you make in the something old, something new group, or if you're just using newer materials, the Paper Pals group. You know, Facebook is making some changes to their groups and the way we interact with one another. And I'm thinking that we may need to merge a couple of groups so that we can have everything all together. So if you are, I think the Something Old, Something New group is the bigger group right now. So if you're in the Dandelion Paper Pals group and you'd like to join the larger Something Old, Something New group, I'd like to invite you to come on over. Just do a search on Facebook for it and ask to be invited in, and of course I'll let you in. The Something Old, Something New group is nice because it's more of a scrap busting group, and we can use retired product and mix it with new products and not just, you know, feel like you're constrained to use something that you may want to sell or have in a catalog. I mean, if you're coming at this from a creative place, as I am, you want to use your stash. You want to use the beautiful things that you've invested in, and And I know that I, for one, don't want to stop using them just because they're no longer available. And I'm sure a lot of us have plenty in common that we can learn from one another and share. So if that sounds appealing to you, look for something old, something new, and start sharing your beautiful card designs using the Stampin' Up! Current and retired products. Alright, so there's my green. Let me bring this up a little bit higher so you can see it better. So that's coming along. Just going to do half a sheet for this one because I'm not going to need as many leaves, I don't think, although I could be wrong, you never know. I just want to get some nice rich darks in there. And that's that beautiful pretty peacock. Love that color. I can push the ink around on the surface. Now, these, I should mention that these are inks. They're water-based inks, but you use them just as you would watercolors. They work beautifully with water. They move and mix very much the way watercolors do. They're just a little bit different because they are dye colors. So they're much more saturated, much stronger, and get deeper into the paper fiber. But other than that, you can use them just as you would watercolor. So there we go. Now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking this would make such a great background for a card front, and all you'd have to do would be to just score down the center or make a beautiful note card base, and you could then decorate the top of this. It would be stunning. So you make excuse me, make your own DSP. Alright, so now that I'm going hoarse here, I'm going to close up my inks for now. I may want to go back to them in a little while, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and close them up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start drying my papers with my heat tool, and that gets a little bit noisy. So for that, I'm just going to mute the sound, and I'm not going to be able to dry them entirely, and that's fine. I want them to be a little bit damp because that's going to help with the flower sculpting. So I'm going to mute now for just a few minutes. Okay, so those are a little bit drier. They're still plenty damp. I'm gonna get my mat cleaned up and moved out of the way. Save that ink for another project. So at this point, if you wanted to, you could also spatter some gold ink on there. I'm going a little bit long today, so I'm not going to do that right now, but I may come back and do that in a minute. I'm going to get my my flower and leaves punch. Actually, before I do that, I want to cut this down a little bit to make it easier to get the paper into the punch. So, let's see, cut this in half, save that for something else, and let's see, I think I'm going to see if I can cut this into strips to make it a little bit easier. So that's 1 inch. That's another inch. And then for the flowers, if I go ahead, put that all the way in, and then measure. Okay, so just a little, about 2 3/4 of an inch is a good width for the flowers. And this way I'm going to save a little bit of paper. Wait, 1 3/4. There we go. And now all I'm going to do, excuse me for my losing my voice, I think it's coffee time. Cheers, everybody. Okay, that's a little better. So I'm just going to go ahead, let's start with the leaves. I'm going to go ahead and punch out a bunch of these shapes. And let's see, I think what I'll do is I'll do it one side at a time. So I'll do a few from this side. And then a couple on this side. And this way I'll have an assortment to select from. And let's see, can I squeeze one more out? Maybe. There we go. All right, so you see very, very little waste. I'm just going to drop my leaves in my bowl here. Put my scraps aside. Grab my flowers. Now this is the 140-pound watercolor paper, so it does take a little bit of muscle to punch it out, particularly because it's damp. So the paper is a little bit stronger, more resistant to the actual punching. But if I use 2 hands, I can get my punch to do what I want. Now I'm saving these other leaf shapes that are in the lavender tones because I can use those for petals on other flowers. So every little piece has a has some creative interest that you can use it for something or another. And remember to share your ideas with the group, because that's how we all learn, by sharing all these different things together. That's the best part. All right, so I'm gonna hang. I'll do one more here, but I want to also get some of these 90-pound flowers, because I want you to see the difference in the way the papers respond to the paper sculpting. All right, I just have a little bit left here. I may as well finish up. All right, can I squeeze one more? Maybe. If I cut it. See if I can get one more flower out of this piece of my watercolor paper. There it is. Okay, one more. Okay. So very little waste. Now this is the 90-pound paper, and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to punch out the flower shapes, and then I'm going to use that as a template to show me how much I need for a complete flower. So I don't need the leaf, so I'm just cutting through the leaf, and that gives me the width that I need for the flowers. And then I can tuck that right in there, just like so. And there we go. Okay, so that's all the punching for now. You know, a lot of the punches come in various shapes and sizes, so you may be able to get even more out of your scraps than I am here. I'm going to clean this up, get all these little bits away, and then I'll zoom you in so that you can see a little bit better. Okay. I'm going to get out my paper sculpting tools again. So this is a very nice paper sculpting kit that has a couple of beautiful mats. So you've got the harder detail mat, and then you've got this thicker mat, which I can't get my fingernail under. There we go. So see, it's a nice thick mat to use for sculpting your flowers. And then I also have my reverse tweezer, and I'm going to grab all of these ball burnishers. Okay, so these give you these nice big shapes with which you can create your 3D effect with the paper. So to get started, I'm going to use my thicker mat, and I'm going to use my biggest ball burnisher. I'm going to zoom you in so you can see better. And I'm just going to go in little circles. I'm going to start on the back of the paper. And I want to make sure that I get into the middle of each petal. So that begins to really curve. All right, so something like this begins to happen. Okay, it's like a little bowl. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to use a slightly smaller ball. Actually, I'm going to start with my big one. All right, so now, let's see, I'm going to grab my other tweezer because they're a little bit easier for me to use. So you see what's happening? And remember, this paper is still damp. That really makes a difference. And I have some other paper sculpting tools that I'm going to show you in just a minute. But before I do that, I want to demonstrate using now the smallest ball burnisher, and I can switch my pad, and I can go around the edge and get that beautiful little ruffly texture. And this is the sort of thing that you would see on a cherry blossom, apple blossom, any of the fruit trees have that. And then you can also put some veining texture like so. I should have done that first, and then go back and sort of get your shape back again. Okay, so you just go back and forth like that until you get it just how you want it. If you need to, you can add a little spritz of water, but you get something that starts to look very much like a natural flower. So if I just do the smaller one, I'm just radiating out from the center to the edges of the petals. Do my little ruffle. Start to get those shapes. You may have to go back and forth a few times to get it to do what you want it to do, but you just keep playing with it. And also I would sort of vary the direction that the petals are going in, so that some of them are sort of bowed up, some of them are bowed down. And then of course put them together, or not. If you're just doing a little petal, of course, or I should say a little flower, you may want to keep them separate from one another. Just hold that for a second. Give that a minute to set up. Okay, and I'm using the liquid glue, which I like very much for all sorts of reasons, as most of you know. But also when you're doing something with paper that you've just painted with watercolor, the liquid glue will stick even when the paper is slightly damp, where some of the other adhesives will not stick, and then you might have a mess on your hand. So there's the beginning of a little sculpted flower. Now I could do a lot to this. I could sponge the edges. I could paint some designs on there with, go back into my dies. Let's add a leaf. If I can find a leaf. There at the bottom. Okay, so here's a little leaf shape. And what I would do with the leaf is take my tweezer. Actually, before I do that, I could put a center vein. I could add some little lateral veining. There's the center, 2 lobes, maybe a couple of other little lines. And then I can take my pointy reverse, oops, sorry, let me get this out a little bit so you can see. Okay, so then I can just sort of pinch the bottom, all right, and that's going to give me a little bit of this beautiful leaf shape, and I can sort of curl the tip so it's much more dimensional. And again, my glue, just put a tiny drop. And just arrange that so a little bit of that is showing on the side. Now I'm going to show you something else that I have, but I have to go get it. So let me just finish this leaf, and I'm going to just go to the other room, and I'll be right back. Just holding that for a second. Give the glue a chance to grab. Now you remember the last time I showed you some paper sculpting, I used the blending brushes. All right, so that's another option to coloring your flowers. And don't forget, you know, you can mix it all up. You can add your sponging, your blending brushes, your watercolor, your, you know, sparkles, or your gold. Really, it's never ending. So let me put this on the screen while I just go to the other room very quickly, because I have something else that I want to share with you. So give me just a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I have these stamens that I bought. Now, the last time I showed you how you could use snowflakes to put the centers in the flowers. This time I have an assortment of pre-made stamens, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use some of these. If I can figure out how to open the package. Okay, now these are double-sided, and I'm going to grab a couple. And they're just held together with these little ties. I'm just going to loosen that up so I can pull a couple out. And I also have, I wanted to share these other paper sculpting tools that I have with you. These are really interesting. I've seen them used by other people, but I've never tried them myself. So why don't we give it a whirl and see how they do. So they look like this. And what's special about these tools is that they have a grooved surface. Let's see if I can get that to focus in so you can see that. You see it's got some grooves. So that's the big one. Here's a kind of a medium one, so you can get very, very fine detail. I'll show you what that does in just a second, but before we get to the new tools, I want to get my piercing mat out. I'm going to take my flower that I just made with you, and I'm going to use a stylus to poke a hole. And actually this set of tools has some very beautiful, sharp, tapering points. So I'm going to start with the little one. If you don't have these, of course, you can always use your piercing tool. But you don't want a hole that's too big, at least not at first. Let's find out what size hole is going to be best. I'm going to go to the second one up, make that a little bit bigger. Now, I can, because this piercer tapers, I can push that up a little bit further and make the hole just a little bit bigger so it's easier to use. And then what you're going to do is take a couple of your stamens, all right? You're going to kind of fold them in half and stick them. I'm going to start with one. Pinch that and stick it right through that hole that I just made, like so. And then I'm going to do it again. Let's see if two will fit through there. I may have to make my hole a little tiny bit bigger. Okay, so we just do a little trial and error here. Okay. There's one. I think I have to do it all at once. All right. I see I have to even make it. I'm going slowly because I don't want to make it too big. So I'm just gradually testing to see what size is going to work best for these particular stamens. Because I want them snug in there. I don't want the hole to gape. I don't want them to come through. So there they are. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to fold those stems over, give them a little trim because you don't need so much. Okay, and what I would do is I would use a dimensional I need to get a new pack of dimensionals out, but I would just take a dimensional and put that right over those stems. And now when I'm ready to use my flower, all I have to do is peel off the backing of the dimensional. And I'm just sort of fluffing those petals up a little bit because now that I've sort of manhandled it, they've lost their shape a little bit, but let me show you what that looks like. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so my plan is to spend a little more time doing this. I'm going to make a bunch of these. Let me get my stamens standing up here. I'm going to make a bunch of these, and I'm going to be using them on my paper crafting project for tomorrow, which is going to involve the Easter Bunny. So I'm going to give you a quick preview of some things that I've done in the past that I think you may like to use for inspiration. So let's do that very quickly before I go. To begin with, oh, and I didn't do the thicker. I have to do the 140-pound watercolor paper, so I'll show you that in the, why don't we do one real fast. Let's do no time like the present, right? Let's do it real fast. So here's my pad again. This is the thicker watercolor paper. This is the 140-pound paper. This time I'm going to try my new grooved tool. So let's zoom in. And hopefully you'll be able to see something. So I'm going to run that from the center of the flower out. And that's going to give me several grooves in one go, in one pass. So that's how that works. And of course you've got all the different sizes. And then I want my ruffles. Love the ruffles. I think the ruffles really make a big difference. For that you want the harder pad. And you experiment with, what you have around the studio. If you have, your piercing pad will probably work very nicely for using the ball burnishers, but for doing this fine work, maybe just a few pieces of paper towel would be sufficient just to get it going. But you're going to get a different result based on the surface that you're using. Now again, this is the thicker paper, and it's going to give me a more substantial flower, but I can do just the same. Okay, so that's very pretty. Let's get our center, and make sure we're on camera here. I'm a little bit too close. Let's zoom out. Sorry if I was talking off camera. This time I'm using the smaller I don't know if you can see the tiny, this one is very tiny, very delicate. It might be a little too delicate for this thicker paper, but I am getting some very fine, beautiful grooves down the center of the petal. Now this, as I mentioned, this is the thicker paper. This is the 140-pound watercolor paper. So I think what I want to do is I'm going to grab one of my daubers. I'm looking to see if I have one that's sort of in the Violet family. Oh, this one hasn't even been used. Okay. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my gorgeous grape ink, and I'm going to sponge around the edges. And the reason I'm doing that is because this paper is much thicker, and so I see more of that kind of white edge. So I'm just going to go around and give it a little darker accent. You can use any color you like. Do the same thing on my larger petal. And the other thing that happens is that as you add more ink, you're adding a little more moisture to the paper, so it becomes a little more pliable, and you can kind of manipulate it into sort of, I don't even know what the words are, sort of smoother, finer shaping. Okay, so just a couple of seconds of that. Get back to here. There we go. Okay, so it's starting to look something like that. And I think you agree, it's starting to look an awful lot like an actual flower. Very beautiful. Again, we can add our stamens. So this time I'm going to start with my bigger poker or piercer. Now that I have a better idea of how thick these tiny wires are. Fold those in half. Okay, so I have a nice point. Push those through. Fold that over. Trim away the excess. And then add my dimensional. Now, if you're not going to be using a dimensional, then you may want to just put a spot of glue on there to hold that in place. But I'm going to be using dimensionals on mine, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that. And of course, I would add my leaves. So let's just cover that up. Give that a good press. Make sure that's stuck on well, but I'm not removing the backing yet. So there we go. So this is a 140-pound paper flower, and this one is the 90-pound flower. It is a little more delicate. Obviously, this one's a little stiffer, so if you were to use this on a box or tag, that might be your better choice. If you were using it on a card and you wanted a slightly softer effect, then that one with the 90-pound watercolor paper might be the way to go. So there they are. Very pretty. A lot of fun to make. You could spend a rainy afternoon like we're having here today and produce a whole bunch of these things. Get all your different paper punches out, see what they do, and then you will have a nice little box filled with these gorgeous flowers ready to go for whatever your next project may be. All right, now before I leave, I do want to share with you what's coming up tomorrow. So if you'd like to take a quick screenshot of that, you can do that, and that way you can, you know, get an idea of how you might want to color them. Now, if you would like to learn more about upcoming classes, events, and workshops, and also get some PDF instructions and video tutorials, be sure that you sign up for notes from Dandelion Cottage, and that way you will be notified before anybody else about what's coming up. And there is a brand new issue that's going to be going out later today, so stay tuned for that. Look in your mailbox. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure that you subscribe now so you don't miss it, because there are some links to some video tutorials that I think you're really going to like. So make sure that you please subscribe to Notes from Dandelion Cottage. If you're watching me on Facebook, the sign up button is up above in the banner, and on YouTube it will be in the description. So now very quickly, I want to show you what's coming up with the Easter Bunny. So the Easter Bunny set comes with a punch and this wonderful stamp set. So there he is. Here's the punch that punches him out. In this issue of Notes, you're going to have a link to the video that I made on how to color the Easter Bunny with watercolor pencils. It was a very popular video, and if you haven't seen it, I would recommend you go look at it. Here's an example of a card that I made last year. So this was the Ornate Bunny Easter card. So you can see it's very ornate. And it's actually an easel card. But it's more than just an easel card, because not only can you prop it up and put it in a place where you could see it, okay, and I've done mine all in neutrals, but it also has a place to stamp or write your message, as well as a little tuck. And so you may want to have a little Easter surprise in there. It could be some flat chocolate like the Ghirardellis might be able to fit in there. But if you wanted to give somebody a gift card, that would be the perfect place to put it. And so there is that. But what I really wanted to share with you is what I did with the current paper pumpkin. So I've been working on a prototype to make a pop-up card, and it's not quite done, but I think you'll get the idea. Let me just get these pieces out. So what I did was I created this really cute 3D pop-up card, and I'm going to get you closer so you can see better. So it looks something like this. Now you want to stamp your, there we go. You want to stamp your greeting on the front like so. And then inside you can see the Easter Bunny is tucked in that greenery with all of his little chick friends. And then on the back of the card you have an area to put a message, or you could add another one of your Easter bunnies. So if you have this set, if you have the, let's see what the name of it is, the Sweet Springtime Paper Pumpkin Set, you're going to want to get the PDF to make this alternate project. Okay, and I did use some additional dies, and I'm trying to think of the name of those dies. Let's see if I have them here. Well, I don't have it handy, but I will have all of that information in the newsletter. So if you want to get a hold of how to do this, make sure that you subscribe to Notes from Dandelion Cottage, and you will stay in the know with all of the featured projects. So there you go. That's been a long day. Lots of ideas. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to see if I can pull all these ideas together to create something even more elaborate. I'm thinking about a kind of a board game that you could play with the little people in your life. So stay tuned for that. Stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and I will see you next time.